Good evening, everyone. It is November 5th, 2023, and we had a really eventful week of the market last week. A bunch of news came out. We had, I believe, Apple earnings, and I can't remember if we had some other earnings last week, if that was the week before. Markets have short term memories, and so do I. The consequence of whatever news that we did have was that any news that was slightly poor was shrugged off, and even a market such as the Russell, which has pretty clearly been a poor performing market. Let's just zoom out for a second. Here you go. This low is from June 2022. Here's October 2022, and we revisited it and broke it the week prior. So even the Russell able to get a bid and on some serious volume. Let's also mind that these are accelerating volumes. We haven't seen volume that high since June, when we did get that leg up. Now, we can also show the other markets. Here's the Dow. I am still long from whatever that is, 32,900 on the futures, about 328ish on the cash. Not the best volume yesterday. NASDAQ also getting a move up to pretty much where I was short earlier. I was short earlier around this low, I think 368 and 20 cents. The S&P also getting a huge move up. Again, no climactic volume relative to the sell side. So what does this all mean? Well, the COT is showing that they're less short than they've been all year. This is the least short we've seen them since, I believe it was, I think it was something like June 2022 or something like that. So, although they're not long, this is dramatically less short than they've been in a long time. And we've got evidence that small specs, retail guys, bought the dip down at 410. And again, this is all of as of Tuesday's close. So think about when we were trading at 418 or whatever that is on the S&P. On the Qs, we were trading down here around 350. The Russell was still trading near that low, the lows of this balance area. That was as of Tuesday. So I'm sure as of Friday's close, the speculators probably got even longer. So if I had to guess, for this week, I would look for two things. Well, news-wise, if you look to the left of the screen, we don't really have much. We've got Waller on Tuesday. There's a bunch of smaller Fed speak throughout the week, but Waller Tuesday, JPOW before the bell Wednesday. I can't imagine that being very long. Thursday, JPOW towards the afternoon, near power hour. Friday, University of Michigan consumer sentiment. Bonds, I'm sure that's going to be something to watch. 1 p.m. on Wednesday, 1 p.m. again on Thursday for the 10-year and 30-year, respectively. Bonds were able to catch a bid last week. We can just throw that up. The ZB. Here we go. Bonds were able to catch a nice bid last week. But again, this isn't anything crazy, right? What's the high to low there? Low to high there, 5.85%. If you had simply taken the Russell instead, that would have been 8%, 8.5%. So bonds, although yes, they did move up with the possible thought of rates easing, they didn't really move that much relative to something like the Russell. So anyway, here's what I'm thinking. Bonds are seeing some sort of covering. The Russell, which again has been so just shitty all year. Look at this thing. It barely has had any green days. It's just been a steady downtrend. Look at all this from January. Sorry, January was back here, had an uptrend, but it spent so long balancing at the lows. It did not balance at the highs like the here you go, the S&P. Where's the low of the year? That was January. ramped up, came back down. It balanced at the highs and broke out further. This thing balanced at the lows and kind of made it back to that February high, that August high. It didn't really go anywhere. So this piece of crap, in other words, is the thing I want to be short. I want to be short the Russell. I want to stay long the Dow. The Dow is still showing signs of people being heavily short on it. So the Nasdaq looks like it has room. The S&P, arguably the S&P and the Russell both, they're not really crowded long as much as they are simply not crowded short. Um, the amount of longs in this thing, we can show the S&P instead, is not nearly as long as we were back in July and August. The sentiment is not nearly as bullish as it was in July and August. In July, people were extremely confident of a move to 4,800, freaking 5,000 on the SPX. The sentiment was much clearer. And there does seem to be pretty confident sentiment in some sort of end of year rally. So I think this thing is a fade going into the end of the year. This rally is a fade going into the end of the year, in my opinion. Um, what it does beyond there, I'm not too sure. So if I had to put on some kind of trade, I'd be looking for a short on the S&P or the Russell, likely the Russell, with a target of making new lows, getting rid of this stupid 410 low where all the idiots bought the dip. Maybe they don't end up being idiots, but you know, if your entire thesis was Santa rally, well, you know, I'd look for somewhere around SPY 400 to trade. So perhaps that should be what I'm saying. Is in general, I'm looking for SPY 400 to trade. Does that happen all today, tomorrow, next week, whatever? I doubt it. We don't have a bunch of news this week, so here's what I'm thinking. If the idea is that we trade down to SPY 400, then we're likely near the highs of this wave, retracement, whatever you want to call it. So, I don't know. Maybe it goes up to here somewhere, 445, okay? We're somewhere around the highs. If we are somewhere around the highs, and we had a very expansive week, then we should probably look for this week to be somewhat to have a contraction in volatility. So I will be looking for us to stop making new highs sometime this week or next week, and I'll be looking for a contraction in volatility this week. I think mean reversion and not breakouts will end up being the theme. I think it wouldn't be too bad of an idea to play mostly the long side for a day or two until we get some supply building or structure building above us. And maybe towards the end of the week or next week, we start looking towards filling in those gaps below, getting into this kind of, this sort of area. All right, that's how I'm looking at this thing. Hope that makes sense. Hope that helps. Have a great night. Trade safe.